Stay healthy and be healthy. Okay. I'm going to get us started. Joe is coming into the room. Good, we're getting a nice crowd for the morning. Good morning, Joe. All right, Shabbos. Shabbos, everyone. We're now live also on Facebook. So everybody, welcome and good Shabbos. And we're going to begin. Let's see if I can find it. Just check it out.
What are you doing?
Don't you want to see it? Okay. You want this? Did you turn the sound down?
What?
Turn the sound down.
Okay, let me just check that this is. Okay, good. So people see us on Facebook also. Shabbat Shalom. Welcome to Hollywood Temple Beth El on this morning. And for a good wake up, I have Matovu for us to start off. I have it in English and then a Hebrew transliteration here in the red print on the page in front of you. And this is Cantor Danny Mastang. And we continue now. We welcome you. Carmen, I see you've joined us. Welcome aboard. And we welcome you, Hollywood Temple Bethel, your local and international congregation. And we're going to begin our formal opening with the introduction to the Baruch Hu with Shochen Ad. All we join in together. Shochen Ad Marom Bekadosh Emaho V'chatuv Ranu Tzadikim Baranai V'yesharim Nava Tehila V'fi Yesharim Teithala U'v'divrei Tzadikim Tebarach U'v'shan Chasidim Tetramam U'v'keref Kedoshim Tehit Kachadash ובמקלות ובירות עמך בית ישראל שמך מכינו בכל דברו שכן חובה כל יצורים לפניך אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו להודות להלל לשבח לפאר רומם להדל לברך להלל ולקהל סך כל דברי שירות ותשבחות דוד בן ישר עבדך משיחך ישתבח שמך לעד מלכנו. And we continue at the bottom of that page. Blessings and thanks from now. Turning brachot todot me'ata v'yad olam. Baruch atah Adonai melech hadolah tishbachot el hodot Adon haniflaot. Abochem b'shir ezihim ramelech elchei holamim. And we continue a little short of a minyan for the Baruch Hu at this point. We're just going to go right into the morning blessing, the blessing over the light and darkness.
Peace. 7 people.
God is the creator of peace and of everything that exists. Baruch atem echolom yotzor choshech. And praise of all that lives. We continue with El Adon, and I promised this one for Murray Aiden because he likes both of Israeli folk dancing. So here's El Adon set to an Israeli folk
El Adon al-kol המעשים ברוך ומבורך בפי כל הנשמה גודלו וטובו מלא עולם דעת ותבונה סובבים עולו
אל האדון על כל המעשים ברוך ומבורך בפי כל הנשמה גודלו וטובו מלא עולם דעת ותבונה סובבים עודו המתגאה חיות הכל ונדע בכבוד על המרכבה זכות ומישור לפני כיסו חסד ורחמים על לכבודו טובים מאורות שברא אלוהינו יצרם בדעת בבינה ובהשכל כוח וגבורה נתן בהם להיות מושלים בקרב תבל טובים מאורות שברא אלוהינו יצרם בדעת בבינה ובהשכל כוח וגבורה נתן בהם להיות מושלים בקרב תבל מלאים זינו וגינו גנאי סיבם בכל העולם שמחים בצאתם וששים ברוע עושים אימה רצון הגונה
Adon in a long way. El Adon al kol.
Okay, so we don't have much opportunity to dance in the formal synagogue, but the pews and the benches just too narrow. But dance is always a part of worship. King David, when he brings the ark back to the people of Judea from the Philistines, he dances in front of the ark all the way, and we have dancing also as an obligation for Simchat Torah and of the whole festival of Sukkot. In fact, dancing, juggling. Hasidim incorporated extensively. You know that. And if you watch the Chabad telethon, they're always dancing, and the Yemenite dance also incorporating religious songs into their dance. Very, very common. Like I said, we get stuck in our pews, but as Jews, we can't sit silent anyway. Well, how does a Jew stand still? He's waving back and forth, waving back and forth. Something goes very far back, and people have marked on it throughout the centuries. Why is it the Jews can't sit still? It's because Kol Asmatai Tomana, all my bones shall proclaim, as the Psalms say. Okay, we go ahead. And we continue with the vision of the angels. Kulam mekablim aleihem, ol malchut shamayim zeh mizeh, v'notnim reshut zeh lazeh, להקדיש ליוצם, בנחת רוב סבינו על קדושו, כולם כיכרים בירה. קדוש, 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 אדוני צבאות, לארץ כבודו. דוכנים וחיות הקודש, ברעש גדול מתנשאים לעומת שרפים, תם משבחים ואומרים, ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומות. We conclude this theme of the morning lights with the prayer, "O cast a new light upon Zion, and may all delight in its splendor. Or chadash shel Zion ta'ir, v'nizkech lanu me'ora li'oro, baruch atah Adonai yoseh hamorot." And we continue with the prayer expressing our appreciation for the love we feel in having the gift of the Torah. Amar Rabba Ahaftanu Adonai Eloheinu Em Lagedol Avitera Amata Aleinu Avinu Malkeinu Ba'avur Avotenu Shebatchu Becha Shebatchu Becha Avinu Malkeinu Batelamdeim Chukechayim Kein Techanenu Tlamdeinu Avinu Ha'avarachamon Amrachem Rachem Aleinu V'teim B'libeinu L'havin L'haskil Lishmoa Lilmod L'lamed Lishmoa V'lasod Olekayem B'kol Divrei Talmud Toratecha V'yahava V'ha'ereinu B'toratecha V'dahabek Libeinu B'mitzvotecha V'yached Lehevavdeinu Li'ahava U'lira'et Shemecha V'lo nevosh Le'olam va'ed V'lo nevosh Le'olam va'ed Ki v'shem Odshecha Agadol v'hanora v'atachnu Nagila v'nismecha b'shuatecha V'havienu l'shalom Ve'ava kanfot ha'oretz V'tolichenu kameniut Kameniut le'atzeinu Yepa yeshot atavonu Chata mikolam v'lashon Keraftanu l'shemcha hagadol Selah selah be'emet Lehodot lecha U'yachelcha bi'ahava Baruch atah Adonai Avocheh b'moiseh bi'ahava. And together Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Vaed Ve'ahavta Et Adonai Elohecha B'chol levacha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol me'odecha ve'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher Anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha v'shinamtam levanecha v'dibarta bam v'shivtecha b'beitecha v'lecha b'derech shavbeha u'mecha u'kshatam leos al yodecha v'lo totafot bein einecha u'ktaftam al beitecha u'visharecha. And we take the tzitzit in hand in the last paragraph. Reminder to have the tzitzit as a reminder of our obligations. ויאמר אדוני משה לאמור דבר אל בני ישראל ואמרת להם ועשו להם ציצית על כנפי בגדיהם לדורותם ונתנו ציצית הקלה ותיל תכלת ולכם לציצית וראיתם אותו ושכרתם את כל מצוות אדוני ועשיתם אותם ולא תטורו אחרי לבבכם ואחריניכם אשר אתם זונים אחריהם למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי ייתם קירושים ליליכם אני אדוני לכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים, ירא אליכם אמת, לכם אמת. God is true and eternal God. Emet v'yatziv, true and sustaining and correct and righteous and reliable. We continue with the song of praise of the children at the shores of the Red Sea as they pass through from slavery unto freedom. Bottom. Moshe uvnei Yisrael chanu shirab simcha raba v'yamru chulam kamocha v'elim Adonai mi kamocha nedor b'kodesh norati lot osefele Shira Shemho Geolim Shemcha Asefat Hayam Shira Hadasha Shemho Geolim Shemcha Asefat Hayam Yachad Kulam Odu Yachad Kulam Odu V'lecho V'yam Nayim Lo Le'olam Vahed To Yisrael Kumar V'yezat Yisrael Uvdechinu Mecha Yoda Yisrael Go'aleinu Adonai Tzivot Shemo Kedosh Yisrael Baruch Adonai God Yisrael. And we turn now to the Amida. We're going to stand in place or figuratively with the opening verses of the Amida together, the Kedusha, and then silently to the conclusion. Adonai sifatai tiftachu pi yagid hilatecha Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elokei Avotenu Elokei Abraham Elokei Yitzchak Elokei Yaakov Elokei Sarah Elokei Rivka Elokei Rachel Elokei Leah Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor El Elyon Omer Chasadim Tovim V'Konei Hakol V'Zocher Hasdei Avot V'Gol B'neihem L'man Shemo B'Ahava Melech Ozer Mashiach Magen Abraham Upokei Tzara Ata Gibor Le'olam Adonai Mechai Matarav Lo Shia Mashivaruach Agashem Mechakel Chaim Bechesed Mechayem Meitim Berachamim Rabim Tomech Noflim Verofech Olim Umatir Asurim Mekayem Emunato Nishenei Avar Micha melech meimit Atzmiach Yeshua, Ne'emonata l'chayot meitim, Baruch Adonai, Mechayeh HaMeitim. And we continue now with the Kedusha, on the page in front of us. Kedeshim Chabalam, Keshem Shmati Shemato B'Shmei Marom, Katuv Ayad Neviacha, Karza Zeviyama, Kadosh, 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 Adonai Tzivaot, Baretz Kivodo, Oz B'Kol Rash Gadol, Adiv Chazak Mashmim Kol, Et Nasim Lo Matzerafim, Kam Baruch Yomeru, Baruch Varanai, Mimeko Homo. Omim Kamcha, Makenu Tafia, Tim Loch Alenikim Hakim Anachnu Lach, Matai Tim Loch Betzion, Bekarvim Tishkon, Et Gadal Vetit Kadash, Betoch Yerushalayim Echad, Ador, Netzach Netzachim, V'eineinu tirena, tirena, Malchutecha kadavar, Omor B'shirei ozecha, Ayele David Meshivsky Kehayim Loch, Adonai Leolam Elahai Tzion, Lovado Hallelujah. Let's start it together. Ledor Vador, Ledor Vador, Ledor Vador, Ledor Vador, Ledor Vador, Nagigan Lecha, Ledor Vador, Ledor Vador, Ledor Vador, Ledor Vador, Nagigan Lecha, Ole Netzach Netzachim, Ole Netzach Netzachim, Tushavcha Nagi, Meshivcha Chayleinu, Mipinu Layamush Le'olam Va'ed. Again, Ledor Vador, Ledor Vador, Ledor Vador, Ledor Vador, Ledor Vador, Nagigan Lecha, Ledor Vador, Ledor Vador, Ledor Vador, Ledor Vador, Nagigan Lecha, Ki Melech Gadol, Gadol v'Kadosh, Gadol v'Kadosh, Ata Ki Melech Gadol, Gadol v'Kadosh, Gadol v'Kadosh, Ata Ledor Vador, Ledor Vador, Ledor Vador, Ledor Vador, Nagigan Lecha, Ledor Vador, Ledor Vador, Ledor Vador, Nagigan Lecha, Baruch Adonai, Akahahadosh. And we continue silently. Yismach Moshe.
Yismach Moshe Metnas Chalvavi. Kom je weg, ons weggepijn. Slaap en weg, dus nog een shalom. Zijn hier, of zo'n shalom. Tot we gaan vandaag. Ik ga even wat zeggen. Dus we gaan het we gaan shalom. Ik moet echt een paar shalom. Echt zo. Bashalom.
Yeah, I'm going to do a reprise with the Shamru, and I've got Cantor Schwartz. There's a great opportunity to use some great cantors. Thanks to YouTube, Cantor Schwartz from Park Avenue Synagogue in the Shamru.
Shalom.
ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, את השבת. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, את השבת. לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, את השבת. ביני ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, את השבת. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, את השבת. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ, וביום השביעי שבת וינפש, וינפש. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, את השבת. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, את השבת, את השבת.
I think about it. Cantors, when you have a great cantor in the synagogue, nobody pays attention to the rabbi. I'm sorry to say for my colleague there, but it's the cantor that gets all the mileage. Going back here, we had Cantor Katzman. I have a feeling that more people remember Cantor Katzman singing than they remember the sermons of Rabbi Wagner, Rabbi Collin, and Katzman.
Yeah.
Now another cantor, Cantor Propus. I'm going to go to Oseh Shalom, which marks the very ending of the private petition at the end of the Amidah, and also the end of the Kedusha. Here we go, Oseh Shalom. Oh, Barbara's joining us, good. And I have Cantor Propus. When you remember Cantor Baharav, who was here, Cantor Propus was the one who taught him a lot of the American cantoral music. I had met him in Houston, so he's now in Detroit. And his
עושה שלום במרומה, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו. עושה שלום במרומה, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. עושה שלום במרומה, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו. שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו, יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל העולם.
Me who creates peace in the heavens above and the stars and the planets and the nebulae, create peace upon us, simple people on earth. And we say Amen.
Amen.
We go ahead now with our unit of study, continuing Pirkei Avot. We're now with the students of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, and he's introduced them in the previous reading, and now he gives them an assignment. It's a very beautiful assignment. He says, Amar lem tzura'u ezi derech yishara. You guys go out. And I don't want you to abstract it from your studies or from a reading in the Talmud or the Bible or Mishnah, whatever it is. I want you to actually go and see what people do. What is the right path that a human being should take? In other words, don't do it from your own thinking. Actually watch people and observe them. And so we go down, and there's a list of attributes. Eliezer says, Ayin Tovah, good eye. Yeshua, and good eye means not like the Ayin Hara that you cause curses on people, but looking for good inside people, always looking for that which is good and positive in people, which we know people don't do. We look for things to like so, right? That's the Ayin Ra. That's the actual Ayin Ra, the evil eye. Then Rabbi Yeshua Chaver Tov. You need to have a good friend. Rabbi Yossi Omer Shachen Tov, a good neighbor. Rabbi Shimon Omer Haroet Hanolad, the ability to see consequences, that what will happen. Rabbi Eliezer Omer Lev Tov, a good heart. And when we say heart, we mean the seat of the personality. It doesn't mean sympathetic, kind-hearted. We mean the actual seat of the personality of the person, the inner core person. That's what it means when we say Lev Tov. Lev meaning the mind, the brain, the thought, the soul. So, I see that Eliezer ben Arach's words are even more important than any of the others. He, in his encompassing phrase, has incorporated all your elements. So one of the questions, you'll see the next one goes into the negatives, which is Surah Ezaderach Ra'ah. Right? Now go and examine what are the paths that people should hide from, Yitrachek. Watch people and observe them. Come back, and each one comes with the opposite of what he said. Rabbi Eliezer, the bad eye, looking only for bad in people, right? Rabbi Yeshua, the bad friend, the bad neighbor. Then it's the other one, Rabbi Shimon, instead of saying not knowing what's coming ahead, because you can't not know what's going to come ahead, but haloveh ve'eno mishalem, one who borrows but doesn't come back. And we're going to see how the two connect. And then finally, and it gives a quotation proof from the Psalms, Lord, but tzaddik, one who is righteous really forgives and gives, forgives and gives. Rabbi Elazar Omer lev ra, right? That which is a nasty, rotten, inner core person who only can think of evil, right? And so this is the worst of the attributes. It includes all the others. So the question might be, well, what's the connection? They seem disconnected. And so some of the commentaries look and see, well, there's a progression. Looking for good in other people is the first step, but you are not, just by doing that, you're not sufficient, you're not strengthened enough. You need the Chaver Tov, you need to build a relationship with some person who's going to guide you, lead you. You can lean on for advice, they'll lean on you for advice. And then the neighbor, you need that also. Look for people around you. You're not going to rely on them for advice necessarily, but when things go bad or you need something, you can call out, and they'll come to you and you'll come to them, right? This networking. This psychologists point out to us that this ability to create networks of people around is the number one characteristic of things that divide healthy people from unhealthy people, emotionally healthy from emotionally unhealthy. This ability, creating of networks of people around you. Not necessarily friends, but people you can rely on. So there's a natural progression. Then finally, the ability to see the consequence and say, well, in dealing with my neighbor and with my friend, what's the consequence of my actions? I'm going to do something good for him. I'm going to do something. If I do something bad, what would be the consequence? If I do something good, what would be the consequence? And then finally, the all-encompassing personality, which covers all. And so the negatives also go in that pattern, right? The loaning and not returning, borrowing and not returning a loan is an example of not seeing the consequence of one's actions, right? If you constantly take and never give back, you are going to lose that person, right? That's the opposite of not seeing the consequences. Now that makes that one, right? But you notice this, the progression of personality traits. These are what we want to incorporate in us. As I said, he didn't say, go and find me the proof text, although one of them did. He says, go and watch how people behave. Watch how people behave. This is very important in rabbinic thinking. Go out and look and see what are the people saying. You cannot make a decree unless you know the people can follow it, right? We are always in rabbinic thought worried, how can we express to the public? If we can't express to the public, if we can't know what the public is doing, we cannot lead the public. Right? It's not exactly following the polls, but we have to have our foot on the ground or our finger up in the air, whatever way you want to, whatever metaphor. So let's go ahead now with the Kaddish Rabbanan. Joe, you can lead us. Yitkadal.
Yiskadash Meiraba.
Amen.
Elmo Divra Charute Viamlich Malchute. The Chayechon Mechon the Chay B'chol Beis Yisrael. Ba'agalav Zman Karim V'imru Amen.
Amen.
Yehesh Meiraba Mavurach Olam V'olmo Maya. Yisporach V'ishtabach V'ispuah V'islamon V'isnaseh. V'sadar V'salei V'salo Shemei Kodishah Barichu. Elam in Kol Berachata V'shirata. Tuj B'chata V'nechemata V'mirom V'yom V'imru
Amen.
Al Yisrael, Al Rabbanon, Al Talmudayon, Al Kol Talmudayon, Al Kol Ma Diva Rasa Barasa, Diva Sar V'hain, Divri V'chol V'asar V'char, Yehei L'chon, L'chon Von, Shalom Rabo Chene V'chis V'rachman, Chai Marichem M'zoinim, Derichem V'kninim M'kidim, Avahuan, Diba Shemai V'ir Bar V'imur Omai Yehei Shlomo Rabba Min Shemai Chaim Tov Molayna V'akol Yisrael V'imur Omai Osei Shalom Bimam Hu Yaseh Shalom Aleinu V'akol Yisrael V'imur
Amen. Amen. Okay, there we go. There was a phone beeping in the background. Okay, we got it. Very good. And reminder, service brought to you by Hollywood Temple Bethel, your local and international synagogue. I'm going to stop the share for a second. We can just wave Shabbat Shalom to everybody. You can see me. Most of you can turn on the videos
Shabbat
if you want for
shalom.
a second, or keep it private. Either way, just to see for a second, see everybody. Okay, and everybody be well. And this Shabbat, going to go into this Torah reading, the story of introduce ourselves to the plagues, the first of the plagues, and some of the meanings of the plagues, and then our topic for today, since this is Moses in Egypt, I'm going to look at Moses at the end and how he's looked upon by the ancient Egyptians, by the ancient Greeks and the Romans, and then by Freud and the Jewish Midrash as well, with a little bit of interesting music and artwork to match. So we're going to go back, share screen. Sorry, not that one. Yeah. Let's close this one.
Rabbi, does this narrative tell something about the government in Egypt, the size of the people, the way that the Pharaoh was governed, the people, and so on?
In the Torah reading that we have, in our Torah portion itself, we're going to it. I go into it, yeah. And who's fighting who in this? Who is this battle against? Is it the battle of Moses and Pharaoh, Moses and the people of Egypt, or Moses and the theology of Egypt? Who is the fight against? We'll go into that in the Torah reading. Yes.
But the fact that the Pharaoh was approachable says something about the way that the civilization was set at that time.
Very interesting. When Solomon is the king, the two prostitutes come to him with their baby. So that may have been an open court, or he's coming in. When Moses comes in, he's not coming in just like a regular citizen. He's coming in as a messenger, sacred figure, something like that. So, when you have that, it may be that, and we do sense, by the way, the Egyptians do have a fear of the sacred. And so when somebody comes in, it's not just that he's being democratic. Moses coming in as some kind of mysterious holy worker. Pharaoh wants to know and be sure, who is this guy? And I think that may be why he accepts Moses. Good question. Very good question. Going to go into the reading. Let's go ahead. We open the Ark. And we start with the opening of the service. Ein kamocha. Let's all join in together. Ein kamocha Elohim Adonai, ein kemasecha, malchutcha malchut kol olamim, umemshaltecha b'chol dor v'dor. Adonai melech, Adonai malach, Adonai yimloch le'olam, Adonai oz le'amo yitein, Adonai yimarech et amo b'shalom. Avarachamim eitiva b'tzavcha Tzion Imnei Chomot Yerushalayim Imnei Chomot Yerushalayim Imcha levabatachnu melech Eram v'nisa Adon Olamim Vayivin Saron Vayomer Moshe Uma Adonai V'yafutzu Oivecha V'yanusu Misanecha Mipanecha Ki Mitzion Tetzei Torah Ki Mitzion Tetzei Torah Revar Adonai Mi'Yerushalayim Baruch Shenatan Torah Baruch Shenatan Torah Le'amo Yisrael B'kedushato.
Barich Shalom Alma.
Blessed is the Lord of the Master of the universe. Blessed be the divine crown. And continue with the that in God alone do we give our trust. Be'anarachetz v'lishmei kadisha yakira ana amal shushbechan Be'anarachet, Be'anarachet, Belishvekadisha, Kadisha, Yakira, Ana'amat, Vishbechan, Yeheirava, Kahadama, Netiftav Livoi, Beoraita, Betashlim Nishalim Delibi, Beliba Becholama, Israel, Letavo Chayin Velishlam. Amen. And we open our figurative art, take out our figurative Torah, we continue. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai
Eloheinu,
Adonai
Echad. Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonai, Kadosh Shemo. Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonai, Kadosh Shemo. Elul Adonai, Tiyun Romema Shemo Yachdav. Lecha Adonai, Hagedol, Hagevor, Hatiferet, Hanetzach, V'Hahod. Yehovah Shamayim U'Va'aretz, Yehovah Shamayim U'Va'aretz, Lecha Adonai, Amamlacha, Amit Naseh Lechol Rosh, Romemo, Adonai Eloheinu, Ve'ishtachavu, L'Adam Raglav Kadoshu, Romemo, Adonai Eloheinu, Ve'ishtachavu, Kadsho, Ikadosh, Adonai Eloheinu. Okay, so now we come to our Torah reading, and Marcel, you asked a very good question. How is it that Moses is given free entry? And keep in mind, he's coming in as representative of we don't know how many thousands and thousands of people who are working the fields and the construction for Pharaoh. And so Pharaoh needs to know what's happening, and that's why he's going to listen to him, probably. But also, he's coming in as a holy man, so it probably gives him an extra amount of clout in the court, coming into the court. We do have in this portion, starting by Eri at the very beginning, which is chapter 6, and we're in the middle of that portion, though, that we're going to be reading. And it is there that God officially uses the name Yud He Vav He, that we don't pronounce anymore. Jehovah, in the English transcription of it, we read it as Adonai to avoid trampling on the name of God. And so one of the questions is, what is it from? And there have been suggestions that actually it is from an Arabic root word, because Moses himself is in Midian, the Sinai desert. It's Sinai, and it's northern Arabia, southern Jordan. That area is the Sinai, the actual Sinai that the Bible's talking about, that whole range of desert. Kadesh, in those areas. And his father-in-law is Yitro, a Kohen. He is a priest. So there is, and Yitro seems to recognize God in all the dealings. He's the one who seems to recognize God. So some people suggest that maybe in this name is something Arabic. And so they look into Arabic roots. This is interesting. The Arabic root is related to a root for being passionate. And very often when the word Adonai is used in the Bible, right after it is Elkanah, God who is zealous and passionate. We usually read it as jealous and therefore demanding of me and me only. But this would make sense when rabbis interpreted that Elohim, the generic word, is used in terms of judgment. God is the abstract, the great clockmaker. Everything is in place, everything is proper. And whereas when they see the word Yod He Vav He, this indicates God as passionate, as compassionate, not as angry, but the forgiving. God is loving. And so maybe there's something in this, that when we see the word zealous, it's because he's loving. He wants this because he cares for me. I care for you, you care for me. There's that sense in there. So that may have been one of the senses in that use of the word. So anyway, come now to our reading. This And we're going to go the first introduction of Moses to Pharaoh. We have the famous scene. He takes his staff, throws it down. Aaron takes his staff, throws it down, and it turns into and the translation is, a lot of places, a nachash, a snake. The English here uses the word serpent. Serpent's much wider term. Tanin. Tanin in modern Hebrew is a crocodile. Biblical Hebrew is any kind of sea monster, tanin, which is very significant. Earlier, when he's at the burning bush, he uses the word nachash, which is just an ordinary snake. Here, the Chartumei Mitzrayim, the magicians, with the priests of Egypt, create a serpent also. And then Moses' serpent swallows their serpent. Of course, Pharaoh doesn't care. The next plague, and that's what we're starting on in our reading also, is the attack on the Nile. And what happens with the Nile? Nile turns to blood. And apparently the Egyptians knew this very often. They had blood in the Nile, a reddening of the Nile, and everything died as a result. And it has to do with the way the rains brought bacteria of some kind, and those brought plagues into Egypt. So the Egyptians themselves recorded this, nothing by itself unusual. But the rabbis, or not just the rabbis, even later commentators point out, what we have here, as the words are used in the Bible itself, is this is a war against the gods of Egypt. What is Pharaoh in Egypt? Pharaoh is the embodiment of God. Sun god, Amun, Atum, depending on which period you have, Ra, like the Pharaoh of the Exodus, Ra, Meses. Ra, sun god, Meses, Moshe, son of the sun. Moshe is Meses, Moshe, without being attributed to the sun. Right? He is coming in as God's son. Hence no other name in front of him. That could be how it's to be interpreted. All right. So he creates what? He creates the tanin. Now, what is the tanin? We usually translate actually as the crocodile. If you look at Egyptian religious imagery, the crocodile becomes the throne of the gods. Pharaoh is identified with the crocodile. The crocodile is the god of fertility also, god of blessing. And so when Moses' crocodile swallows their crocodiles, what's he saying? All your power and all your magic, your claim to be a god has now been vanished, has now been made to disappear in my presence. Now you see the symbolism. Then we go to the next one, which would be the Nile River itself also. And again, the Nile River turning red, turning blood red. What also is blood in imagery, biblical imagery? Blood is polluting. The woman after her monthly period, that the flow of blood, when a man has any kind of sudden mysterious flow out of the body, also, both of them become impure. And so some commentators point out, said, no, interesting that after the blood in the Nile, they wait 7 days to the next flood. Well, to the next plague. And 7 days is the time of purification. And the next plague is the frogs. Frog is a sheretz. What's a sheretz in Hebrew? A disgusting creepy crawly. And what does a disgusting creepy crawly do? It makes everything impure. And so they notice that the case of the Nile turning red, the stone and wood turn blood red. Well, what are stone and wood? They're statues. They're idols.
You guys have parking here in this building?
And then in the plague of the frogs, the bowls fill up with blood or with frogs. So they become impure. And when you have a bowl that's become pure, you have to break it. Right? So there's purity. And again, 7 days. 7 days is not repeated in the other plagues. All right, so those are some thoughts for us for today with our Torah reading. I'm going to go back up, start with our reading on line A. And Joe, if you go ahead, do our blessings for us, do the honors.
Rabbi, one question before. Yes. It seems to be that Moshe was related to Putiel, the tribe, but it seems that it's not only Moshe, but family also, because one of his descendants, one of the members of the Levite tribe, get married to a daughter of Putiel also. So it seems that there'll be much more relationship than just Moshe with the tribe that he went to live with.
Are you talking about the Midianites? Yeah, the Midianites, and notice the Midianites are associated also with Ishmael in some way. Some places they're with Lot, and some places with Ishmael, but they're related. There's this sense of relationship. Yeah, and they're interrelated.
And it seems
they're
that
very often at war with the children of Israel also. Being relatives doesn't stop you from going to war. That we know.
But it seems that there was a big influence because the Holy Mountain was recognized by the Midianites also.
Yeah, well, we don't know about the Midianites. We don't know that, but it would be possible, But there's no direct reference that the Midianites have that, not in the Bible text. There might be some archaeological ruins indicating some places where the Midianites had some centers of their own, and apparently in the Midianite cults also, what archaeologists found is no statues. In some of their settlements. So there's a connection also. So anyway, let's go ahead with the Torah reading and start, Joe.
Yeah. Baruch Hu es Adonai HaMavorach.
Baruch HaNevarach Lamed.
Baruch HaNevarach L'Olam Voed. Baruch Adonai HaMelech L'Olam Asher B'chabonu Mikol U'amim V'natan Lanu es Torusoi. Baruch Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen. Okay, we'll read the first few verses. Vayomer Adonai Moshe ve'Aaron lemor. Ki yedaber lechem paro lemor. Tnu lechem mofet v'mata el Aaron. Kach et matcha v'shlech lefnei paro yehi letanin. Vayomer Moshe ve'Aaron el paro ve'asu kein. Kasher tziv Adonai ve'ashlich Aaron et matehu lifnei paro ufnei avadat ve'hi letanin. ויקרא גם פרעה לחכמים ולכשפים, ועשו גם הם חתומי מצרים ולהטיהם כן עשו, והשליכו איש מטהו והיו לתנינים, ויבלע מטה אהרון את מטותם, וחזק לב פרעה לא שמע עליהם כאשר דיבר אדוני, ואמר למשה כבד לב פרעה מאין לשלח העם, לך אל פרעה בבוקר, הנה היוצא המימה. וניצבת לקראתו שפת היאור ומטה אשר נהפך לנחש תיקח בידך ואמרת אליו אדוני אלוהי העברים שלחני אליך לאמור שלח את עמי ביעבדוני במדבר והנה לא שמעת עד כה אמר אדוני בזאת תדע כי אני אדוני הנה אנוכי מכה במטה אשר בידי על המים אשר ביאור נהפכו לדם והדגה אשר ביאור תמות ובאש היאור ונלאו מצרים לשתות מים מן היאור. Okay, and we're going to go ahead now. 1 second. Prayer for those who are ill. We pray. Mishaberach Avatenu v'Ham Yosef Yaakov Sarif Karachei B'Leya. U'Yvarech v'Rapeh et HaCholim. May the Holy One who blessed and healed Abram and Sarah, Isaac and Rebecca, Jacob, Rachel, and Leah, bless and heal Esther Elisheva, Pinchas Bertoskovsky, Miriam Leah Dorf, Joseph Ben Galina, Moisey Kelchik, Mindy Levins Pfeiffer, Jennifer Levins, Ronnie Duran, Harriet Levins, Moisey Ben Mania, Barbara Mormon, Esther Gerson, John Alexander, Robert Drato, Roger Rosen, Resha Flava, Jenny Drato, Michael Schinder, Susan Hookman, Shirley Marco, Fira Feinberg, Judy Arklai, Richard Zella, Laban, Masha Ben Sarah, Jason, Hannah Bat Sarah, Eliel Ben Hannah, Liva Bat Sarah, Herb Mormon, Irina Hosepian, Shoshana Bat Sarah, Hannah Sarah, Leah Bat Rachel, Hannah Sarah Bat Kayla Alta, Alan Whalen, Hayar Nesty, Sophie, the friend of Judy Arkalai, all those afflicted with the COVID-19 virus, Gabby Brown, Marion Brown, and now we're going to ask you to give me names of those who are ill so we can add them to our thoughts.
David Mordcha Ben Yehuda Noach.
David Mordcha Ben Yehuda Noach.
Simo Harlev.
Lev.
Ronan Ter Harlev.
Ronan Ter Harlev.
Susan Feinberg.
Feinberg.
Susan Sharon Lipman.
Lipman.
Esther Baicha Bat Yeshiva. Esther Rachel Batsiva. Laban Moshe Ben Sahara. Haldon Sheldon Ben Lazar.
Sheldon Lazar.
Rachel Bat Ventura.
Rachel Bat Ventura.
Ronald Rodman. Julian Eisner.
Julian Eisner.
Tito and Gabi Gorodicho.
Tito and Gorodicho.
Wendy Keller.
Wendy Keller. And any other names? Those who are ill, we pray for them. May the Holy One send them healing, both body and in mind, to them, to the whole Hasavis, and to all who are ill. And let us all say Amen.
Amen.
Pray for all those who are ill. Let me pull up joint prayer for those who are ill. And second, Cantor Freud, Jonathan Freud, lovely rendition of the Mishaberach, and you can follow along.
May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say
Amen, amen. And now, come to our Haftarah, and it is a parallel of Moses with the staff, swallowing the Tanin, the great crocodile of Egypt, and Ezekiel, many centuries later, is taking this metaphor, and he looks at Pharaoh. And he talks about Pharaoh, who has failed to come to the defense of his ally, the people of Judea. This is 586. Babylon is destroying Jerusalem. Pharaoh had promised support, and he proves to be a broken reed. And so Ezekiel says, you're going to get it next. But he uses the metaphor of the crocodile to describe Pharaoh of Egypt. So very appropriate to our Torah reading. We see the Hanin, that Moses' staff destroys, right? Symbol of the crocodile, the symbol of Egypt. Here, Pharaoh is described as a crocodile. I'm going to pull you up, and he creates a creature that's pulled up on a hook, and the little fish that are sticking on, little parasites that stick to the crocodile's body, they're also caught with him. There's all the allies that hung around with Pharaoh and the Egyptians. So that is the parallel to Ezekiel in his day to the Pharaoh in our Torah reading. Go Amar Adonai B'kapsi et Beit Yisrael min amim asher nafutzu bam v'nigdashi bam le'nei hagoyim v'shvad matam asher natan l'avdi Yaakov v'yashvu aleha lebetach u'anu batim v'natu kramim yeshvu lebetach basoti shvatim b'chol hashatim otam misvivotam yedu ki ani Adonai leichem. Shana Asirit Basiri, Bishnem Asal Choresh Hayat Debar Adonai Eli Lemor Ben Adam Sim Panecha Paro Melech Mitzrayim Vina Ve'alav VaMitzrayim Kula Daber V'Mata Ko Amar Elohim הנה עליך פרעה, מלך מצרים, התנים הגדול, הרובץ בתוך יוריו, אשר אמר לי יורי ואני עשיתני, ונתתי חיים לחייך, והדבקתי לדגת יורך, קסקותייך, ולאתיך מתוך יורך, וכל דגת יור בקסקתך תדבק, ותשתיך המדברה, וכל דגת יורך פני השדה תיפול, לא תאסף ולא תקרץ, לחיית הארץ ולעוף השמיים נתתיך, לאכלה ידעו כל יושבי מצרים כי יד אדוני יען היותם משענת קנה לבית ישראל ותפסם בך בכף תירוש וקעת להם כל כתף ישנם עליך תשבר ואמרת להם בכל מתנאים. Okay. This is an interesting side. I mentioned the parallel to the crocodile. The cult of the crocodile became even more famous as years went on in ancient Egypt, where people would catch crocodiles, mummify them, and keep them in the house, a mummified crocodile to protect them and watch over them, right? So that crocodile is a symbol of Egypt. Ezekiel plays on that metaphor very well. So now we continue our service. We're going to go ahead with the prayer for the country. And this is a very trying time, I think we're all aware, and I'm looking for something that expresses our feelings, prayers. And I found something that I just felt I had to share, where I have a congregation here. It is called Oakwood University Congregation Aeolian's Virtual Choir. It's a pastor with I guess Oakwood University Choir. And it is such a beautiful prayer for the country. It's really dedicated to COVID, but it is the song of We Shall Overcome. This is this Monday dedicated in memory of Martin Luther King Jr., who called on our better angels to bring us together rather than separate us. He pulled us together. That was his interest. And he could achieve what he achieved because he got everybody to buy into that we are one people with one rights. Right, in alien rights endowed by their creator. And so I just thought there's such a beautiful mix with the imagery also in it. So I wanted to share it with you for our country and for all of us. The pastor speaks very beautifully.
Hello,
at the
everyone.
beginning.
Crazy times, huh? On March 11th, the World Health Organization declared COVID-19 a global pandemic. It seems as if the world has come to a screeching halt. And in times like these, it's natural for everyone to be anxious and scared and not really sure of the future. There's a song that got us through one period in time. And I believe that same song, the aliens, and myself, just want to say, hold on, let's keep each other in prayer. And at the end of this, we can say we use this time to reset, to relax, and to recalibrate and become more connected with the community. Such a beautiful thing. I've seen more of my neighbors in these last few weeks than I've ever seen. So hold on, and we'll get through this together.
We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall Deep
very moving, very touching, and throwing in the struggle for human rights and decency of the 60s with the virus and with our own current virus of animosity and distrust and fear that we have on all sides. And so I thought that was just a great prayer for us all. And we'll go ahead with praying for the people of Israel as well. At least they're getting their citizens shot up in the right way. Most successful, that probably by the end of February, they'll have everybody vaccinated. What they did is serve as the guinea pig for the world. That was the agreement that they did with the vaccine companies, because they were small country and a good medical system. So they could test and follow up the results. That's really why they were able to get it. Los Angeles, I am ashamed to say California, is worse in the nation, almost just ahead of Alabama, a poor state, and we're the rich state with all the resources. And Los Angeles County far below in terms of distribution. They've got the vaccines, they can't get it organized. It's very, very shameful. I hate to say it, what we are going through. So at least in Israel, I think they have to pray for us at this point, but we'll pray for them also. Let's join in. Avinu Shabbat Shamayim. Avinu Shabbat Shamayim. So Yisrael B'Galo Barechet Medinat Yisrael Eshit Tzmicha Gulatenu Again Aleha Bevrat Chasdecha Ufros Aleha Sukat Shelomecha Shtachacha V'Mitcha Noshe Sareh V'Yatzeha Taknim Beitzah Tova Milfanecha. Strengthen the hands of those who defend our holy land. Avinu Shabbat Shamayim. Deliver them and crown their efforts with triumph. Avinu Shabbat Shamayim. So you say, B'Galo. Bless our land with peace, O God, its inhabitants with lasting joy, and let us say, Amen. Avinu Shabbat Shamayim. So you say, B'Galo. Barechet Medinat Yisrael. Eshit Tzmicha Gulatenu. Hagen Aleha Bevrat Chasdecha Ufros Aleha Sukat Shelomecha V'nomar Amen Amen. And we're going to continue now. Return the Torah to the Ark. And you can unmute the mics. Go ahead if you want to join in. And we return the Torah to the Ark altogether. Ya'alu Hashem Adonai Kineskav Shemo Levado Hodo Aleretz V'Shamayim Vayarem Keren Le'amot Hihila Alecha Chatzihidav Le'bnei Yisrael Am Kerovo Hallelujah, Hallelujah. And we join in. Mizmor LeDavid Havul Adonai b'nei Elim, Havul Adonai kavodos, Havul Adonai kavod shemo, Ishtach Havul Adonai behadat kodesh, Kol amayim thirim, Adonai amayim rabim, Kol Adonai ba'akach, Kol Adonai be'adar, Kol Adonai shover arazim, Vaishaber Adonai tarzeh havanon, Yakim Kamegabam Siryan Kimo Ben Ramim Kol Adonai Chotzev Lavotesh Kol Adonai Yachim Midbar Yachil Adonai Midbar Kadesh Kol Adonai Yachole Layalot Yachsof Yarichal Kolo Omer Kavod Adonai Lama Bunya Shabayeshev Adonai Melech Leolam Adonai Oz Le'ama Yitein Adonai Varech et Amo Vashalom. And we back into the Ark figuratively, and we continue. Eitz Chaim Hi. Eitz Chaim Hi Lama Chazikim Ba V'Tom Cheha Meusha Deracheha Adachena Am V'Chon Netivoteha Shalom. Ashihi Behinu Adonai Elecha V'Nashuva Chadesh Yameinu Kekedem. And I welcome Cantor Propus again with Enkel Eloheinu, and Cantor Finkelstein also in Enkel.
Ein Keloheinu, ein Kadonenu, ein Kemalkeinu, ein Kemoshienu, mich Eloheinu, mich Adonenu, mich Kemalkeinu, mich Moshienu. Ay, dai, dai, da, da, dai, 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 da, da, dai, 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 da, da, dai, dai. Ay, dai, dai, da, da, dai, 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 da, da, dai, 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 da, da, dai, dai. Nodel Eloheinu, nodel Adonenu, nodel Malkeinu, nodel Moshienu, Baruch Eloheinu, Baruch Adonenu, Baruch Malkeinu, Baruch Moshienu. Ay, dai, dai, da, da, dai, 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 da, da, dai, 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 da, da, dai, dai. Ay, dai, dai, da, da, dai, 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 da, da, dai, 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 da, da, dai, dai. Atahu Eloheinu, Atahu Adonenu, Atahu Malkeinu, Atahu Moshienu, Atahu Shehiktiru Avoteinu Lefanecha Et Ketoret Hasamim. Ay, dai, dai, da, da, dai, 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 da, da, dai, 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 da, da, dai, dai. Ay, dai, dai, da, da, dai, 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 da, da, dai, 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 ya, da, dai, dai.
And we'll wrap up with Aleinu. Let's join in together. Aleinu l'shabech ladon hakol l'tekru l'otzeya breshit shelo asanu keharatzot velo samanu k'mishpachot adama shelo samchakenu kahem v'gor aleinu kechol hamonam v'anachnu korim o mishtachavim o modim lifnei melech malchei amlachim hakadosh baruch hu she'unot hashamayim v'yosed haaretz Moshe Mikaro Bashamai Mimal Ushchinatu Zo Begav He Merahomim Hu Eloheinu Einod Emakenu Efesulato Kakatu Betorato Yadata Yom Vashivota Elevavecha Ki Adonai Hu Elohim Bashamayim Mimal V'ala aretz mitahat einod. And then we pick up the very last line. V'ne'emar v'haya Adonai lemelech al kol haaretz v'yomahu yeh Adonai echad u'shema echad. And those who are reciting the Kaddish, I'm going to come up with a list of those we are recalling at this point. This Shabbat is the outside of Bernard Levins, remembered by Harriet and Jennifer Levins. Harriet ran our nursery school for many years while I was the rabbi. Right? Barbara Dratto did it many years before that, and then Harriet, and of course the daughter Jenny, and so they're remembering Bernard Levins, Harriet's husband, Jennifer's father. And we recall also those who passed away during this year: Harry Kyle, Ann Davis Wenker, Jack Petsko, the victims of COVID-19 virus. Sadly, they're reaching the number of 200 a week in Los Angeles area, 200 a day, it seems. And every day of delay of the vaccines is another 100 dead. I hate to say it. The distribution is going haywire. And we also recall Sheldon Adelson, great Jewish philanthropist. Whether you like the fact that he tended to be towards the right, or you don't like that, let's give credit where credit is due, in particular with Birthright, because Birthright was about to collapse and he saved it, pumped in 150 million of his own money. And basically that protected, I will say, more than anything else, the identification of younger Jews with the land of Israel. That 10-day trip into in Israel, it proved in the long run to have very, very powerful impact, more so than any other program. Nobody could believe it, but that's what it did. So in preserving and protecting the Jewish people, and that's why if he was to the right, it was because that's where his heart lay, in trying to figure out how to best preserve and protect the Jewish people. We also credit him, if you've stayed at the Venetian, you owe him thanks for being your host. That was his big thing. And if you're buying computer parts and computer software, what was it, Comdex? That was his invention, that big computer exchange showcase in Vegas. That's really where he made his great start in life. So a lot of things to credit for Sheldon Adelson. His memory be full. Blessing those who are saying the Mornis Kaddish. Please recite with me. I pull up the Kaddish. Mornis Yitkadal, Yitkadash Shemei Rabba, V'yamadi Brachilutei, V'yamlich Malchutei, B'chai Chonim Chonim Chai L'chol, Beit Yisrael, B'agalas Makrivim Ramein, Yehi Shmei Rabba, Yalam Lomer Maya, Yitbarach, V'yishtabach, V'yipa'ah, V'yishtamam Yitnasei, V'yitadar, V'yitaleh, V'yitalal Shemei L'kutsha Berichu, Leila Mikol Bir Chata V'shirata, Tush B'chata V'nechamata, Damriyon Be'omar V'imru Amen, Yehi Shlomo Rabba Min Shemaya B'chaim, Aleinu V'akoysev V'yimein, Osa Shalom B'imrama, Uyaseh Shalom Aleinu, V'akoysev V'imru Amen. He makes peace in the heavens above, grant peace unto us and to all Israel. And let us all say Amen. And we
Amen.
Hollywood Temple Bethel, sponsor of the Shabbat service, your local and international congregation. Wrap up the service part with Adon Olam, and then we're going to go into Moses and see how Moses is seen by the ancient Egyptians themselves, by the Greeks, the Romans, and other unusual sources. I'm going to go into...
Hi, Rabbi Weinberg. This is Danielle. I can hear you.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I can hear you on the phone, but I don't know what the problem is.
Hold on, I'm trying to turn this up. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I'm going to have somebody help me because I tried again to be on the Zoom and it didn't work. Anyway, I heard the service. Thank you. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Okay, good. So, okay. Well, let's see, maybe you have a tech problem with your end. You want to check it out so you can get someone to help you there. All right.
I had no problem before. I don't know what happened last week, and I tried again this week with a new link that you sent me, and it doesn't work. Anyway, I don't want to take time.
Because you come through on the phone, so it's connecting. The phone is the right link, so I don't know why. You may want to have someone who comes and just checks your setting.
Yeah, I will. Right. I will this week.
Okay, very good. Okay, now.
Bye.
Bye.
Shalom again.
And we continue with, I'm going to go back to what happened here. I don't know what that's what I'm waiting for. There we go. You can hum along.
Reis na so kheft so yikoy la zay melach shmoy ni yikro ve hare ki khlo se ha koy le ba to yim lo khnoyro ho yo ve hu oy ve hu ye besiforo ve hu khot ve yishayni le hamshil loy le yakhbir bli reishis bli sakhlis velo yoy ze hamisro ve hu kayli ve khay goyali ve tsur khavli be yesoro ve hu nisi humanoisli Nos koisi be yoy mekiro ay be yodo af kidru khigi be yesi shan be yoy yiro be bruchi gibi yo vos yashem li lo yiro וחי גויאלי וצור חבלי ויש צורו והוא נזי ומנויס לי מנוס קויסי ויוי מקירו
Okay. I'm going to do a stop share for a second. I'll close this out. Say hello to everybody. And I'm going to start recording this because now we're coming into our discussion section. So I want to just give a wave to everybody. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
You're on the phone, if you can watch it on Facebook while we're going on. It's always a little delay, but we're going to I hope that it works fine for you. So I'm going to go back to the share screen. I want to talk about Moses and some unusual views on Moses from different sources. So I figured what would be more unusual? Looking at, we'll open with music, and what could be more American about Moses than the black spiritual, we shall let my people go. Except I looked for a version, I said, what's a version that really expresses something unusual? So I found this movie version, done 1941, it's called Sullivan's Travel, and it's by a man who was a movie producer, and he produces schlock movies that make money, but they have no content. And he quits his job and he says, I'm going to make a movie that is America. And he goes and he travels to all parts of America. And that's basically the movie called Sullivan's Travels, play on Gulliver's Travels. And here he comes to this church in the deep South, and they're going to sing, Let My People Go, but it has an interesting twist to it. I'm not going to explain anything more. I want you to watch it. Music is beautiful, but the twist is important. Oh, the volume is.
We're going to share our pleasure with some neighbors less fortunate than ourselves. Won't you please clear the first 3 pews so they may have seats? And when they get here, I'm going to ask you once more, neither by word, nor by action, nor by look, to make a guest feel unwelcome, nor draw away from, or act high-toned. For we is all equal in the sight of God. Amen. And he said, let him who is without sin cast the first stone. Yeah. The chain shall be struck from them, and the lame shall leap, and the blind shall see, and glory in the coming of the Lord. Now let's give our guests a little welcome. When Israel was in Egypt land, let my people go. Oppressed so hard they could not stand, let my people go. Go Then Israel out of Egypt came. Let my people go. On the left, the proud oppressor's land. Let my people go down, way down in Egypt
An unbelievable twist. The oppressed are singing for those who are more oppressed, right? Who could be more oppressed? This is obviously the South, deep South. Who could be more oppressed than the blacks of the South? And yet here they are more oppressed than them. Now the chain gangs of the prison systems of the old South, right? Hard labor. Notice they walk in like zombies, Walking Dead. This is as in some of the worst cases in concentration camps where people almost given up life, and they're walking in. So it is like the Israelites chanting to the Egyptians as slaves, they will be free. This is the equivalent, right? So I thought this was a very powerful introduction to Moses. And so now that brings me to Moses himself. Said, from Moses to Moses, there was none like unto Moses. That's attributed to Moses Maimonides on his grave. And of course, we're going to talk about Maimonides later on. And I said, I have this series about great Jews, but Moses is the greatest, right? Starts the whole thing rolling. Abraham's a Hebrew. Moses, well, he's not really a Jew, he's a Levite, but right? Judaism, right? We trace to Moses, Moses at Sinai, Moses at the Exodus, Moses at the Red Sea. So I said, let's see how Moses was looked upon by others and then by ourselves as well. So I want to start with this one that I know you have seen before. I'm going to enlarge it for you. Moses by Michelangelo in the Vatican. Now, this is how an Italian sees Moses. A very nice, dignified face, very serene. 2 horns. We know where the horns are from because it is a take on Moses coming down from his second trip to Sinai after 40 days and 40 nights, the second roundup, and his face is shining. That's how the Hebrews translates it, but they use the word karan or, which is the shining skin, but in Latin, it's very easy to translate to Karen or a horn of leather. That's all how you translate it. And it may not have been so far off because the sign of horns was a sign of divinity. So it may well have been indeed that was its intention. The ancient Canaanites put horns on their gods as a sign of divinity. So maybe the metaphor is this man who's been touched by the divine, not just a ray of light. Could be the play on words intentionally. Anyway, that's where the metaphor of Jews having horns may have originated. We don't know, but there's one. But right, notice very serene, very muscular, because Michelangelo, it turns out, used males, and he looked for muscular males for his prototypes. Even his women are muscular because he used male models, because that's what he could get in those days. So we go ahead then. All right, it's considered to have been his favorite work, this Moses in particular. Well, let's look at the ancient Greeks, right? The Greeks met us really before and after the conquest of Alexander. Even before the conquest of Alexander, the Greeks are very curious about the outside world. They have settlements everywhere, and they meet the Jews, the Hebrews, or the Jews of that time, and they're very impressed because they call this a theocracy. Theocracy not means that the priests are running the country, but that the country is under the rule of God and as a rule of values, as opposed to they saw themselves a rule of dictators, tyrants, petty thefts, petty thieves, thugs. Even the democratic governments weren't successful in getting good leadership. So they actually described this very well. Right? This is before Alexander, beginning of time of Alexander, and then up till the time of Antiochus, at which time everything goes south. But that's a different story. So here's Hecataeus of Abdera. And he describes after the first establishment of settled life in Egypt in early times, which took place according to the mythical account, the period of the gods and heroes, right? For the Greeks, the period of the gods and heroes, time of the Trojan Wars, all the great figures and so on, they're about 1,000 years before their time, which would put in the time of Moses. So he's in the time of Achilles, he's in the time of Hercules, he's in the time of all these great figures in Greek mythology. So he's identifying with this period of heroes. They felt that was a golden age and they were in an iron age. They were much inferior. That's how the Greeks saw themselves. So he's the first to persuade the multitudes to use written laws. Menevis, that's how he pronounces Moses, so he transcribes it. A man not only great of soul, but also in his life the most public spirited of all lawgivers whose names are recorded. Right? Moses, the great lawgiver. Notice how he sees it, creating a just society and a savage society, an orderly society. Very positive view. Another one also later, much later, there's a Strabo. Right? He's in the somewhere around the year 24 in the Common Era. He's writing right around the year 0 before and after a few decades. Greek historian, geographer, and philosopher. He's very interested in traveling around his world, travels widely and collects information from local sources. He's also very positive. He had written about the founding of the temple, right? He's talking about the Jews. He's a Greek. He's talking about the Jews. The temple of Jerusalem continued to be surrounded by an aura of sanctity. He is a Greek, having come to see the Jewish temple, okay, or of sanctity. So that's because Jews are beginning to be pervasive throughout the Greek Empire, and they're influencing, or the Greek and Roman world, they're influencing the people. So here's how he writes it, trying to figure out the history of Moses, an Egyptian priest named Moses, and he's drawing on some Egyptian sources. Egyptian priest named Moses, who possessed a portion of the country called Lower Egypt. What's Lower Egypt? This is in the land of Goshen. As you go towards the Mediterranean, that's Lower Egypt. Being dissatisfied with the established institutions, they left it and came to Judea with a large body of people who worshipped the divinity. He declared and taught that the Egyptians and Africans means then North Africa, Tunisia, Libya, Tunisia, that's what it means, entertained erroneous sentiments in representing the divinity under the likeness of wild beasts and cattle of the field. That the Greeks also were in error, making images of their gods after human form. For God, said he, may be this one thing which encompasses us all, land and sea, which we call heaven, or the universe, or the nature of things. And by such doctrine, Moses persuaded a large body of right-minded persons to accompany him to the place where Jerusalem now stands. You can see that here, this is the Greek-Roman world. They are being influenced by, to some extent, also Greek philosophy, which is also looking towards a unitary theory of God, that which unifies all existence, and the influence and contact with the Hebrews of God, that unifies all existence. And he attributes it now to Moses. He's taking something that is from some Egyptian records that he knows of. That where that comes from in a second. Well, another picture of Moses holding the 10 Commandments, the 2 tablets, about to smash them. He's come down, he's furious, right? He's going to come down. This is by Rembrandt, comes down from Sinai. He's about to smash the 10 Commandments when he sees the people dancing with the calf. This is a very Dutch-looking Moses, I guess. Moses did use some Jewish models, but I don't know, is this a Jewish model or more a Dutch face? Right? Each one picks his own society to reflect Moses. Again, that's Rembrandt's version, right? His sorrow in the face, maybe not even anger, but sorrow expressed in the face. Maybe at Moses' emotions. Michelangelo didn't. Michelangelo had Moses too serene. So, well, we get to the Romans. It was around this Tacitus, who was a little bit later than Strabo. And in the beginning, the Romans liked Jews. Julius Caesar is friends of the Jews. The Jews, when Julius Caesar dies, the Jews mourn Caesar to the extent that the biographers, the Plutarch, describes that he doesn't understand how the Jews, more than anybody else in Rome, cry for Caesar when he dies. It was such a spectacular display of mourning. So, with all the wars, of course, Jews are difficult. And when Tacitus is writing, they have this terrible war with the Jews when they destroyed the temple in Jerusalem. And so the Romans sour on the Jews. So does Tacitus more than anybody else. So look at his account. And again, he's drawing on some kind of Egyptian sources. Most authorities, however, agree on the following account. The whole of Egypt was once plagued by a wasting disease which caused bodily disfigurement. Leprosy. So Pharaoh Bokoris, who went to the oracle of Haman. Haman is Ammon. That would be the god, Ra-Ammon, sun god, right? To ask for a cure. Was told to purify his kingdom by expelling the victims to other lands. They lay under a divine curse. So really what's happening is the slaves didn't run away or anything like that. The Egyptians kicked us out because we had plague and it was affecting them. Thus a multitude of sufferers was rounded up, herded together, and abandoned in the wilderness. Here, the exiles tearfully resigned them to their fate, but one of them was called Moses, urged his companions not to wait passively for help from God or man. We both deserted, right? God and man have both deserted them. They should trust to their own initiative and get themselves out of their plight. And so they traveled for 6 days without a break. Where he gets this, on the seventh day, they expelled the inhabitants of Canaan and took over the lands, and then built a holy city and temple, right? 6 days to cross the that seventh day, they kick out all the inhabitants of Canaan. This is the first accusation that the Jews kicked out the Canaanites. Okay, took over the land. In order to secure the allegiance of his people in the future, Moses prescribed for them a novel religion, something quite different from the rest of mankind. What different? Among the Jews, all things are profane and we hold sacred. On the other hand, regard as permissible, what seems to us immoral. What's immoral? You free your slaves, you let them rest on the Sabbath, you don't kill your sick infants. That's immoral to the Greek, to the Romans. And profane, right? No images, no gods, who won't sacrifice to us, they won't sacrifice to our gods, right? Jews are miserable people. He gets that from some propaganda actually comes out of the court of Antiochus in the years during the Hasmonean Wars, Maccabean Wars. Okay, another Moses. Let's see how a Jew portrays Moses in art, right? We don't have any real Jewish portrayals of Moses. Jews didn't do much artwork that was preserved, right? Some illustrations, but we tend to avoid faces. So here is Marc Chagall. And Marc Chagall, he's channeling Michelangelo. Michelangelo. The Sistine Chapel. What's in the Sistine Chapel? Adam reaching out and God, the hand of God coming down. But here is the Jewish version. It is God giving Torah to Moses, right? He's played on Michelangelo's imagery, given it a Jewish context now. Notice instead of horns, it's rays of light. And I guess Moses has a Jewish face now instead of a Dutch or Italian face. All right, God is hidden. The people in the background fly here deep in the background. You can barely make it out. The shtetl of Vitebsk, Chagall shtetl, very, very faintly in the background. Here, the children of Israel, the golden calf in the background, the children of Israel. And here, some images, another angel bringing a Torah scroll down, an actual Torah scroll, the Kohen Gadol, here Aaron with the candelabra, and there King Solomon writing King David, I guess, writing his Psalms, right? There's a Jewish Moses floating in the air, right? In Chagall's worlds, right? Everything is floating in the air. Okay, now, what did the Egyptians say? Let's go to the Egyptians. There's an Egyptian, and it's hard to trace exactly, because there's an Egyptian called Manetho. He's an Egyptian priest who wrote a history of the Egyptians in the 3rd century, before the year 0. He is quoted by another Egyptian around the year 50, 60, 70, 80, whose name is Apion, who hates Jews. And then we find Apion quoting Manetho in Josephus, who is defending the Jewish people against Apion. That's his great work called Contra Apion, against Apion. And so it's difficult because it's first Manetho quoted by Apion, who's quoted by Josephus. You can see some of the problems we have in finding the actual text. So what did the Egyptians say? These people we have before named kings and called shepherds also. And he's referring to something called the Hyksos. There's a group of invaders from land of Israel in the north who actually take over northern Egypt and take over the crown of the pharaoh for some time. And the descendants kept possession of Egypt 511 years. We don't know if that's the exact time frame, but they did take over Egypt for a while. The kings of Thebes and the other parts of Egypt made an insurrection against the shepherds, and that there a terrible and long war was made between them. Now, this reflects something that actually took place in history, but he's now identifying with the people of Israel. Under a king whose name was, go figure at the reading, Alis Fragamot. The shepherds were subdued by him, and they were indeed driven out of other parts of Egypt, but shut up in a place that contained 10,000 acres, a place named Avaris. Avaris is northern Egypt, the land of Goshen. It's the capital of the area of Goshen. It was the temporary capital under the Hyksos, and later on the settlement of the children of Israel. So he understands something of that. He's trying to tie it in with his records that he sees. So what did he say happened? To Moses, right? Probably Tutmos, one of the pharaoh's names. Again, that Moses name, son of this Alis, we won't even read it, made an attempt to take them by force and siege. Yeah, with 480,000 men to lie rotund about them, right? So he's making a great war on the children of Israel, or these shepherd kings, in the northern part of Israel, near the Nile Delta, but they couldn't really conquer them. So they came to a composition meaning a compromise. They would leave Egypt without any harm to them, and that was the compromise. They left Egypt. They were not going to go into war with them. Now he gives 240,000 as the count totals with the families, journey from Egypt through the wilderness to Syria, meaning all of that area to the north. But as they were afraid of the Assyrians, who had then dominion over Asia, there he's getting, he's not sure of his history. It was probably the Hittites more probably at that time. They built a city in that country, which is now called Judea, and that large enough to contain this great number of men, and called it Jerusalem. All right, so he's trying to trace the founding of Jerusalem to a record in Egyptian sources of a war against invaders who had usurped the throne, expelling the invaders, they going back, resettling in the land of Israel. Then he has another version now about, and this is the one that Tacitus may have referred to. King Amenophis, and here's the Amun and Ophis, right, the name of a god, both the names of gods, desirous to see the gods. He also communicated a desire to his namesake, the sage, Amenophis, the same name. He would see the gods, he would clear the whole country of lepers and other impure people, and the king was pleased with this. See, that's what Tacitus is quoting. Got together all that had any defect in their bodies out of Egypt. Remember that the Bible itself talks about people who have leprosy to be left out of the camp. So the Egyptians have the same teaching. Their number was 80,000, right? Each one's coming with a different number. He's right. Whom he sent to those quarries which are on the east side of the Nile, that they might work in them, be separate from the rest of the Egyptians. The quarries are in the Sinai Desert. We know these quarries because we have inscriptions in those rock quarries, and they have ancient Hebrew on them. It is like a Proto-Hebrew. The symbols of animals, but they are similar to the earliest Hebrew lettering. So he's reflecting that knowledge. They appointed themselves a ruler out of the priests of Heliopolis, whose name was Osarsif. Now, Heliopolis is in the biblical records On. And Potiphar, who is the father-in-law of Joseph, is a Kohen On. He's a priest of Heliopolis. Notice Osarsif, similar to Joseph, Sif, So he has some records. He's trying to combine these records to make sense of it. They took their oaths, they would be obedient to him in all things. And he then, in the first place, made this law for them. They should neither worship the Egyptian gods, nor abstain from any of these sacred animals, which they hold in high esteem, but kill and destroy them all. In other words, you're not going to worship the gods, but you're going to actually eat them, which is reflecting the biblical account that they pulled the animals in the presence of, they pulled the sheep in the presence of the Egyptians, because they're sacred to the Egyptians, right? He's reflecting that theme, right? He's reflecting that. He's getting it from older sources. And then joy themselves to nobody but those that were of their confederacy, right? They accused the Jews of always sticking to their own. It was reported that priests who ordained their polity in the laws was by birth of Heliopolis, named Osasif, from Osiris, the god of Heliopolis. But then when he was going over to this people, his name was changed. He was called Moses, right? There's the Moses. There's the cause. All right, so it is from a Greek, ancient Egyptian historian who's drawing earlier Egyptian sources, recorded by Apion, who is trying to find everything bad about the Jews that he can find, because by the time he's living, there's lots of tension between the Jews and the Greeks and the Egyptians in Alexandria in those areas. And then Josephus is quoting him to put him down. That's a third-hand, fourth-hand source. You can see this, that historians have tremendous trouble trying to piece together the actual historicity of Moses from this. Well, now, how does an Englishman look at Moses? William Blake. William Blake, a great English poet and artist. He did his artwork in the form of wood etchings and printing. So here he is, Moses, as a very blonde Englishman, and with his staff, and holding something in his hands, looks like parchment, looking at the fire, the bush that is not consumed. Blake is a mystic. He is very much inspired by mystic visions. And so I think he identifies himself maybe in here as Moses, having the vision of the burning bush. Notice the sheep in the under Moses' feet, right? Moses the shepherd. All right, so this is how a very Englishman portrays Moses. The Christian scriptures, obviously they would look at Moses because they're tied to the Bible, our text of the Bible. But in Acts, they accuse us, this is the same Moses they had rejected, who made you ruler and judge. He was sent to be their ruler and deliverer by God himself. Right? The angel appeared to him in the bush, and he led them out of Egypt, performed wonders and signs in Egypt, and for 40 years in the wilderness. This is the Moses who told the Israelites, God will raise you up for a prophet like me from your own people, is referring to Jesus. But our ancestors refused to obey him. Instead, they reject him, and their hearts turn back to Egypt, right? That's the early Christians accusing the Jews, those who refuse to take Jesus, of having rejected not only Jesus, but Moses, because he's predicted. But God turned away from them, gave them over to the worship of the sun, moon, and the stars. And as the Jews had become idolaters, right? Twisting things around. The Jews have become idolaters. Okay, well, who else takes Moses seriously? The Muslims do. So I found this. Sunni Muslims won't do inscriptions. We know that. It's all a geographic artwork. But the Persians and Central Asians never accepted that prohibition completely. And so they did do images of human beings. They are distinguished between images of human beings for purpose of artwork and for that of worship. What they would not do is, no one would make a picture of Muhammad. That was considered outer limits. But Moses, you could. And so I have here this, it is actually Afghan. I wrote it as Persian, it's really Afghan, where it comes from, or Central Asia. There's a similar culture. The Persians, the Central Asians, similar curve. The Afghan language is closely related to Persian, for example. And so here, you can see everyone describes Moses in his own style. Notice it's very stylistic artwork, characteristic of the Muslim work. Okay, my phone is ringing. Let's turn it off for a second. Okay, sorry. You'll get it later. We can turn on later. Moses at the Red Sea. The Egyptians are drowning. I shrunk it down, but what you don't see is their helmets, and the helmets are very much like you picture Mongol helmets in illustrations of Mongol invaders, and they're very Oriental looking. So too Moses and children of Israel, very what we'll call Central Asian looking, Turkish, Kazakh, maybe even more so than Persian looking. Right? Everyone reflects Moses in his style and background. Very good. So how is Moses in the Quran? Obviously, he's Nabi Musa, the prophet Moses. His burial place, according to Muslim tradition, is inside the land of Israel. There's a place called Nabi Musa. It's on the way from Jericho to Jerusalem. And there's supposedly his burial place. The Quran does not accept our tradition. He's buried on the other side of the river, whatever the reason may be. That's where he's buried. It was a place where the Hajj Husseini, the Mufti, first called for an attack against the Jews in the 1920s from the Nabi Musa. And last week it was in the news because some Israelis, Arabs, Jews, Christians, Muslims decided to hold a big midnight rave there for New Year's Eve at the holy place of Nabi Musa. Okay, that's very shameful. Right, of all places, right? It's a sacred place. I have to respect everybody's sacred place, but it was Jews, Muslims, and Christians together. That didn't make it any better. So anyway, go to the Quran, and here's the description. We appointed with Musa a time of 30 nights and completed them with 10 more, right? 30 and 10, 40 nights. Then Musa came at our appointed time, and his Lord spoke to him and said, "My Lord, show me thyself so I may look upon thee. So thou canst not bear to see me, but look at the mountain. If it remains firm in this place, then thou wilt see me." You know this, the story of Moses asking God at the golden calf to show his presence. He says, hide in the rock. So a little bit embellished. When his Lord manifested his glory to the mountain, he made it crumble and Moses fell down. And it's a little bit of an embellishment to our story. And then he recovered and said, "Glory be to thee. I turn to thee, and I am the first of believers." And he said, "O Musa, surely I've chosen thee above the people with my messages, with my words. Therefore, take hold of what I give thee. Be of the grateful ones. We ordained for him in the tablets admonition of every kind and clear explanation of all things. Take hold of them with firmness and enjoy the people to take hold of what is best thereof." Never in the Quran is there an accusation that the laws are intended as a punishment of the Jewish people. They are the special laws for the Jewish people. And unless the Jew becomes a Muslim, he has to be a good Jew. And so Muslims would have police who would police the Jews to make sure they were observing Jewish law. And if a Jew was caught breaking Shabbat, he was in trouble with the Muslims, right? Because they saw themselves in some ways as an extension. It was not necessarily a fight. At different periods, yes, but not necessarily a fight. They put Jews down, second class, but never not demonized until the modern period. Well, modern view. Go to Freud. Here's a Jew, but a Jewish atheist, right? Anti-religious. Looks at religion as an illusion. But he's trying to put Moses in perspective, function Moses and monotheism. And he's very aware of what historians in his day are beginning to uncover. And looking at Egyptian records, it's not clear. They're all presumptions, but he's taking it for granted that those are presumptions. And he looks at Moses liberated and some of the theories of his day. Moses not a Jew, but an Egyptian, because the name is Mose, right? And when the Torah talks about the Exodus, they talk about the children of Israel and also Erev Rav. Big crowd with them, Egyptians. Egyptians are there with the children of Israel. They're all there. The priest names are very often Egyptian names. So if they could be Hebraicized Egyptians, Egyptianized Hebrews is actually more probable. Egyptianized Hebrews, because that's what the Bible is telling us. So, Freud is buying in that they're really Egyptians. Okay, doesn't matter. How does it happen? Let's agree the great man influences contemporaries in two ways, through his personality and through his ideas. All right, he's talking about the theory of great men in history, that history is driven by great men. Very popular thought in history, not economics, not sociology and so on, but the great man leads history. He may lay stress on an old group of wishes of the masses, define a new purpose for the wishes, or lure them by other means. Sometimes this is purely primitive. His personality alone exerts an influence, and his ideas play a subordinate role. Why the great man rises to significance gives us no doubt. We all long for the father of our childhood days, for the father of the hero of legend boasts of having overcome. All the features which we furnish the great man are traits of the father, and in that similarity lies the essence which so far has eluded us of the great man. In other words, in society, politics, we're always looking for the great man. What was Mussolini in Italy, the great man? Hitler, I hate to mention his name, in the Germans, the great man. I don't want to mix metaphors. I don't want to talk about Trump in that same category, whatever we may think. But this idea of, in populist thinking, of a powerful figure who cuts through the morass of politics, because politics is a dirty business. So we all long for a great man to lead us out of the wilderness. All right, so now it's tying in. His decisiveness, strength of will, forcefulness in deeds belong to his picture as a father. Above all stands the self-reliance and independence of the great man. His condition, he's doing the right thing even when it turns into ruthlessness, right? We know this in history. They're great leaders. They become ruthless.
Here.
They may be right, they may be wrong. Mao, ruthless. Changed from China. In the process, he was ruthless.
Mm-hmm.
A tremendous father in the person of Moses stooped to tell the poor Jewish laborers that they were his dear children. The concept of a unique, eternal, omnipotent God could not have been less overwhelming for them. He who thought them worthy to bond with and promised to make care of them if they would remain faithful to his worship. Probably they thought it hard to separate the image of Moses from that of God, and the instinct was right. Insofar as Moses incorporated his own irascibility and implacability into the character of his God. Right? So, God is angry because Moses is passionate, right? Now, notice this. Look what it says here, what Freud says here. And you have to understand Freudian theory. They killed this great man, right? This is one of the theories. The Greeks talk about it. Historians talk about it, that maybe the Jews really killed Moses. They couldn't stand him. Too many laws. And that's why Moses suddenly disappears. That's one of the theories. They only repeated an evil deed, which in primeval times is a law directed against the divine king, which derives from an older prototype. So you have to know something about Freudian theory, which is that, you know this, every boy as an infant wants his mother, father's in the way, wants to kill the father. And part of growing up is psychologically killing the father image to become an independent male. Well, in anthropological studies popular among the time of Freud, it's in the early tribes in Europe, for example, the children of the father of the tribe would kill the father of the tribe, head of the tribe, then take his place. And then in turn, the next generation would actually kill the father. And this was incorporated into early tribal customs where a king would come among the tribe, would lead the tribe, and after a certain cycle of 7 years, the king would then be sacrificed. And a new king would be appointed. 7-year cycles. King has 7 years full power, then he's killed. As from this, we get the idea of king for a day. What would happen was the king didn't want to be killed, so he would appoint someone as a king for a day. That person would be killed instead of the king. These are ancient European myths, and Freud is incorporating it into the story. So I just want you to know that's part of where he gets his Oedipal complex, the Oedipal story. Right, from the myth of Oedipus, who must kill his father, marry the mother. Right, we don't have to buy into it, but that's what he's trying to set up. Now, what is important? What is this new religion of Moses? In children, adult neurotics and primitive people, I apologize to primitive people because we may not be doing a good job to them, we find the mental phenomena called belief in the omnipotence of thoughts. I think, therefore it happens. It's called magical thinking. Magic, the forerunner of science, is found on the premise. And the Bible is attacking magic. You have to understand it. Magic incantations are at home here. It's a conviction of the power with the knowledge of pronouncing a name. If I know the name of God, I can create and change reality. That is the Babylonian myths. It's the story of Balaam, where he cannot create power against the children of Israel because the words don't affect them. New realm of spirituality where concepts, memories, and deductions became decisively important. In contrast, the law of physical, psychical activity concerns itself with the immediate perception of sense organs, one of the most important stages on the way to becoming human. It is the break between the Bacchanalian personality and Apollinarian personality in psychology and in philosophy. The personality of the senses, of the impulse, as opposed to the person of reason. And so this move in Moses is the direction of reason. Modern, in the time of Freud, is the denunciation of reason, the putting of passion and the impulse ahead. If you read all your writers of the end of the 19th, E.H. Lawrence, for example, right? Passion. We let all our passions loose. So Freud is against this, right? He knows it causes what he calls civilizationist discontents. We're not happy, but that's what we have to be. So it continues, through Mosaic prohibition, God was raised to a higher level of spirituality. Door was open to further change the idea of God, which we shall speak later. All progress in spirituality results in increasing self-confidence, making people proud. They feel superior to those who have remained in bondage to the senses. Yes, we Jews feel, yes, we say that in Aleinu. We are not people of the earth. Mishpachot Adamah. People who are bound to their senses, let the senses lead. No, it's our mind that has to lead. Moses gave the Jews the proud feeling of being God's chosen people by dematerializing God, a new valuable gift made to the secret treasure of the people. Jews preserved their inclination towards spiritual interests. Political misfortune of the nation taught them to appreciate the only possession that kept their written records as its true value. And immediately after the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem by Titus, Yochanan ben Zakkai asked for permission to open at Yavne the first school for the study of Torah. From now on, it was the holy book and the study of it that kept the scattered people together. Moses would go on. He says, now we don't need God anymore because we are wholly rational. Once you go through my deprogramming psychoanalysis, you'll be rational. You'll be freed of your instincts. But this is where he's heading, right? So he's using his Oedipal story. He's using early anthropology, but he's leading towards identifying the religion of Moses, the religion freeing human being, towards the freeing of the human being from the id, from the childish impulse that destroys the human being. Okay, Moses. Who else is Moses if not Hollywood? Moses by Cecil B. DeMille, Charlton Heston. Everybody makes the Moses they want to make. What could be better than Charlton Heston, right? Who can't forget it, right? There we go. And you know what? It looks sort of ancient Israelite, I guess. I tried to find a typical ancient Egyptian face or an ancient Israelite face to put. I couldn't find one, a good one, a clear one. There is a reconstruction of Ramses from his mummy, who would have been the pharaoh presumably at the time of Moses. Not a good-looking figure when they reconstruct the face. I decided not to put it up. Weird pointing nose, long down pointing nose, drawn face. Not a worthy, doesn't look like a worthy contender for the job of pharaoh. And finally, we're going to finish up here. How is Moses in our own Jewish legends, finally? From Louis Ginsberg, who took the different midrashim, put them together, and looks at Moses, at the death of Moses, and Moses doesn't want to die, and he says, don't worry, I will attend to thee and bury thee myself. You'll not be by the angel of death. And the voice says, Moses, be not afraid, thy righteousness shall go before thee, the glory of the Lord shall be thy reward. And Moses' activity did not cease with his death, for in heaven he is one of the servants of the Lord, right? Don't worry about Moses. He's still doing fine in heaven. But Moses not only surpassed all of the human beings, surpassed also the entire creation that God brought forth in 6 days. And therefore, God laid all the objects of creation on one side of the scales, and Moses upon the other. Moses outweighed them. Moses was justly called the man of God, who was half man and half God. A little bit Christianizing in this sense, all right? I'm trying to keep for Moses that halo, that glow. But not in this world alone was Moses the great leader and teacher of his people. He shall be the same in the future world. In accordance with the promise God made him shortly before his death, God said, thou that didst lead my children of Israel shall also lead them in the future world. Beautiful midrash, where when all the dead come back to life, Moses will raise up all the children of Israel who left Egypt and died in the wilderness and march with them back to the land of Israel. Beautiful metaphor. He was with his people. He died with them in the wilderness. He comes back with them. He never abandons his people. Beautiful, beautiful metaphor. So that is Moses, right, from all different sources. What is important is not the Moses of the Egyptians, the Moses of the pyramids, well, not pyramids by his time, but it is the Moses of our imagination and of our traditions and our teachings and how we looked at Moses. that is what really counts. So I'm going to pull this off. We're coming here to the end of the session. Next week, I thought it was going to be this week, and I made a mistake on my calendar, and I discovered it's really next week. Next week, the 23rd, 2 days before my mother's birthday, dear Irene Weinberg.
Did you unmute
You
yourself?
remember.
Yeah.
And it would have been 100 years since her birth. Actually, technically it's 99, but some documents I had was 1901, some 1921, some 1922. So I said, well, let's do it now. I'll do it this year, as long as because we're all on Zoom anyway. So I can put up her story with some unusual pictures and some of her own video description of how she made it through. And I thought of it so much so important because, especially for young people, and I hope I can pass it around on YouTube and Facebook, if young people see it, because for young people, things look blurry, they look bleak. The American economy has come back, and then it's stalled with the pandemic, and you have the fear of the pandemic, and you have this sense for people that the old race is still alive, white supremacy is still alive. You have fear from others that everybody is taking away from what's theirs, right? So you have fear and panic and anxiety. And you have this fear among young people that will not make it through. And so I say, you know what, Joe, you understand this. My mother made it through. You made it through. I've got to get that message. We can all make it through. I think that song about we shall overcome with pandemic imagery, right? That's why I want to do this. I want to get that message. Okay, so to everybody, Shabbat Shalom. And everything good.
Shabbat
Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. Everybody have a good and healthy, and I hope you can get your shots soon. You have to be very persistent. Some of the pharmacies, CVS and Ralph's, already putting up websites where you can get registered if you're over 65. Don't delay, Joe. And you may have to try. You may have to push your way.
They don't have it on site, so in case somebody has an allergic reaction, it's not safe.
The allergic reaction, very rare. You don't have to worry about it. Because what they do is they make you sit for 15 minutes, and they have it's only an extreme allergic reaction. If you have like an allergy to peanuts, things like that, where you swell up in a choke, that's the only allergy they're watching for. And so they have all the pharmacies and the distributors have the EpiPen ready. And what they found is when they catch somebody and they got it, within 1 second, he's okay. So that's not the worry. Everything else, the Israelis are now giving feedback, even after the second shot. Side effects very minimal. Swelling, maybe you feel queasy for a day or two, like you have a cold or flu, and that's it. So,
yeah, but do they have nurses, at least nurses on duty?
Yes. This is very well organized. And when they're administering, that's why it's very difficult for them to administer. But you have to be persistent to get in. It's taking them time. They're getting delays. Go look at Ralphs.com. Pharmacies is doing it, and CVS. You have to go onto their websites.
All right, thank you, Rabbi.
They're not making it easy. They're not making it easy because they have tremendous troubles. They're getting confused.
They don't have enough vaccines. That's why.
Yeah, and what they haven't distributed well. For LA County, it's very embarrassing, the distribution procedure. People in Orange County go down to Disneyland, 65 and above, and you got it. You go outside of Los Angeles County, and it's being distributed. Los Angeles County is having a tremendous problem in organization. Okay, so we have to think.
Hi, everybody.
Can you hear me?
Shabbat Shalom.
Can you hear me?
Simon,
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Next week, Rabbi, you ask for ideas. I ask, maybe we can have a class about the Shomronim.
That's a good one. I'll look for it. I'm going to get into that one.
We, as children, we used to get information from Yitzhak Ben Tzvi.
Yeah, because he did the history. Yeah. He was the great researcher of the Jewish.
Maybe I will find something. I will write it on email to the rabbi.
Okay. I know there are a lot of YouTube links I can pull up. That's a good topic. Yeah, because we have a lot of unusual communities that are associated with Jews in one way or another. Yeah. Okay. So to everybody, good Shabbos.
Good Shabbos.
Be well and healthy.
Good Shabbos.
All of you. Good.